Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! I-N-D-Y! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, bud?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Welcome, people. I appreciate you being with us. Another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you from the Hard Truth Studios, brought to you by the fine folks at Hard Truth Distilling Company and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Thank you so much for joining us here on this Wednesday, a special Wednesday. It's 9/11, and so before we get too far at all, I want to make sure that we all remember everyone that gave their lives on this day a long time ago, whether it was in New York City or DC or Pennsylvania, first responders, just regular citizens. A lot of lives lost on that day, and we should never forget that and hold that in esteem. So I want to make sure that I mention that right off the bat. Got my USA shirt on today. So thoughts out to our first responders, and a big thanks to you for each and every day of the things that you do for us. Welcome aboard, everybody. Appreciate you. Another great day ahead as Dylan Sinn will join us here on the program. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star, Rick Bozich. As we move forward, we'll hear from UCLA coach Deshaun Foster. We'll probably hear again from Coach Signetti and take your comments as well. And looking forward to it as we head closer to week 3 of the college football season. And it's starting to get real now. Mr. Carr jumping on from St. Louis. How are you, sir? Appreciate everybody. Gregory, Bruton, Alabama. That's a new one. Down south. Got a lot of football down there this weekend. Philip, how are you, sir? And no matter where and how you're listening to us, our affiliates, 97.7 ESPN, The Ref, always the right call in Evansville. The voice of the region, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, WJOB, and Fort Wayne's only sports station, 1380 The Fan. Make sure you keep her tuned right here after Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and stick around for the rest of the local programming coming at you. How's it going? We're midway through the week, although it's kind of a short week. At least it seems that way. It's not really a short week, but heading out west, Indiana Sports Beat Radio will be in Pasadena for Indiana UCLA this weekend. We'll be heading out that way tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So heading out a day early, day sooner than the team. Someone said that there is they saw the team bus, equipment bus heading out west yesterday. And I'm like, holy cow, that's a long haul. So I would not want to be making that trip if I was driving that 16-wheeler all the way out to Los Angeles to Pasadena. But got to get the equipment out there. That's something I never thought about. They still have to send all of this stuff. I don't know what all it includes. Like, you see the benches on the side that or the heating benches, warming benches, cooling benches, all that stuff. I don't know if each team has to bring their own. But there are several things, of course, that you have to bring, mainly just the equipment itself. Extra helmets, extra this, extra that, extra shoes, extra pads, extra whatever. In addition to the stuff that they're already wearing. So, yeah, lots of stuff going out there. But appreciate everybody jumping on with us. 5 lefts as well. Hope everybody's doing well. Dylan Sinn's going to join us maybe a little sooner than we got a little late start today, but that's okay. Not sure what that meant, Skyler, but we'll get back. Let's see. 4 former Michigan players, football players, joining the party of all teams, of course, suing the NCAA for $50 million because they played prior to 2016. And this is where the house suit that was heading towards the settlement, but is now not heading towards a settlement. But 4 former players are wanting their piece of the pie. That's a lot of money. And I'm like, where does this end? How they determined 2016 to be the date, I'm not arguing with or discussing, but is everybody that played college athletics prior to 2016 going to sue the NCAA? We'll never get this taken care of if that's the case. We'll have to find out. But I don't know that this ever ends. It won't end until there is a complete settlement that both the government and the NCAA arrive at. They're not there. This house suit has not done it. If they can, that's part of the reason, and mainly the biggest reason the NCAA wants to get this done, because once they get that done, there won't be any of these other suits. I'm not going to call them frivolous, but there won't be any more of these individuals trying to sue, trying to get money, because it will be a done deal. But it's not that yet. So anybody that has the opportunity is going to try to do just that. And Braylon Edwards, I think, is one of the names on that list of former Michigan players that is involved in that. They played prior to 2016, like I said. And so we'll have to keep following that to see how that goes. Hey, anybody that's going to the game, I was curious, is maybe in, I don't know, Friday night or Saturday before the game would be a time to get together. But an ISB always fits in. But instead of it being Indiana Sports Beat, we can have an Indiana Sports Bash out in LA, in Pasadena. So for those of you who are going, let's try to find out a spot to possibly meet and get together. Just a thought, as I think that there are going to be several Hoosier fans that are traveling for this trip. Now, when I say several, this is not like Tennessee or Ole Miss or someone like that, but I saw an article in the LA Times where those schools are anticipating a better following of opposing teams from the Big Ten, kind of for this reason. It's a destination trip. I mean, let's get real. Going to watch your team play in Pasadena is 1,000 times better than thinking about going to watch them play in Piscataway. Yeah, weigh that. Pasadena, California, Piscataway, New Jersey. Yeah, nothing against Piscataway, but I'm pretty sure it's not Pasadena. So, big reason to expect more fans to come out there. And this is where Indiana starts to cultivate a fan base. If you get people to start going to your away games, they're going to be coming more and more to your home games. But Indiana's not the only place that has this issue. I saw that Lane Kiffin from Ole Miss was berating his fans, students, especially, for not remaining at the game after the second half, talking about how important it is to have the people in the stands for that portion of the game. Now, I think that's something that's going to take care of itself, as I've said. I think Indiana's going to set a record with 4 sellouts this year. 4. I think Nebraska rather, is a sellout because, and I've remember the path to 6-0 that I have talked about for the last 2 months? I think that has become very real. I'm going to be surprised. I was already would have been surprised if Indiana was less than 5-1. I'm going to be surprised now if they are not 6-0 and bowl eligible on October 5th. That's when they play Northwestern, their 6th game of the season. I think they win this game at UCLA. They come back home and win their next 2 home games against Charlotte and Maryland, and then go up and play on the soccer field at Northwestern. I've got Northwestern as one of the second worst teams in the league right now. And I don't know how much that's going to improve, but it just doesn't look like they've got a lot right now. So there is that. But I think Indiana is going to be 6-0. Remember, you heard that here first. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to talking to Dylan Sinn. We've got a lot of other big game. He covers the Boilers as well as the Irish as well as Indiana, but that is a major game this weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll get you caught up on the high school side of things. We haven't done that. Like Kyle wasn't with us last week. And then, of course, Rick Bozich will join us as well. So let's go ahead and take a break. We've got lots more coming up from the Hard Truth Studios, baby. Welcome, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company. Make sure you stop at either one of your local grocery stores or any place that sells liquor. And it doesn't matter where you are, Florida, Michigan, they've got it, baby. The sour mash bourbons are incredible. The rise, the products that Hard Truth puts out, no joke, are amazing. And if you add in the fact that this is something that was just started 6, 7, 8 years ago, inside of a decade, mind-boggling what they've done. All of their products are award-winning. There you see it if you're looking. The Hard Truth. We'll bring you the Hard Truth as Dylan Sinn joins us next here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel.
In the market for a new or used vehicle? Well, nobody beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com.
Looking for someone to cater your next corporate event, family reunion, or tailgate? To some, a garnish may be nothing more than just a decoration put last on a plate. But in Bloomington, catering starts with Garnish Catering. Serving all of Bloomington and surrounding areas, Garnish Catering is waiting to help make your next event one to remember. Planning a great event shouldn't have to be stressful. Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouth-watering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big-screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer.
country living is just a swing away. It can be hard to find the exact home that fits your family's needs, so there couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf Community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Rebesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details.
Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle with the Fresh Fork. Chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep. Proudly fueling IU athletes and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. The Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use promo code RADIO20 and get $20 off your first order.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Hard Truth Distilling Company and Andy Moore Honda Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday, joined by our good friend Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. And Dylan, it is a gigantic weekend for the three regional teams, college football teams, Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame. Two of those schools are playing each other. Indiana, of course, heading out west to take on UCLA in their first Big Ten game of the season, first Big Ten game against one of the new teams. But this is a huge weekend for Purdue because when this schedule came out, I looked at it and you're like, or I was like, well, that's going to be a butt whipping. But Notre Dame took it on the chin from Northern Illinois at home, which is something they have had a propensity to do over the last couple of years. And so now, while Purdue played Indiana State, they still looked very good doing it, looked clean. So I'm like, yeah, it's at Purdue, and we know some things have happened at Ross Aid before. I'm not so positive about this game for the Fighting Irish now.
No, I don't think you can be. I think that you kind of have to basically wonder what Notre Dame is going to try to do in order to change what happened against Northern Illinois, because the offense just looked broken, right? There wasn't much going on. The running back, Jeremiah Love, is very, very good. But outside of that, it's not a whole lot happening for Notre Dame right now. So they need to figure out what's going on offense, and Purdue is going to come after them, I think, is what I would guess, is that they are going to put 7-8 guys in the box. They're going to try to confuse Riley Leonard in the backfield. They're going to try to run a bunch of different pressures and see what happens, and trust their cornerbacks to guard Notre Dame's receivers on the outside. I think they can. So I think this game is going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be close. And I would not be surprised if Purdue won, because I think the flaws that showed up against Northern Illinois are not obvious fixes, right? It's not, they can just do X, Y, Z and they'll be fine. No, I mean, they got outplayed by Northern Illinois. They got beaten up in a way that I didn't expect. And so I do think that that's something that is going to need to be better this week. And I'm not sure it will be.
Yeah, looking forward to this weekend. And if Purdue can get that win, they will hold out hopes for a bowl. But even without that, the Big Ten has shown me it's going to be – the Big Ten is just fat in the middle. I mean, there are two teams at the top for me. This is for me, Ohio State and USC. And there are two teams at the bottom, and that's Northwestern, and I predict it to be UCLA. Everybody in between there has a fighting chance. I've got Maryland kind of at the bottom. Not sure where they're going to end up. They lose at home to Michigan State last week, so that doesn't look good. But there's like 8-9 teams that I'm like, okay, what do you do with them? Indiana, Illinois, Nebraska. I could go on and on and on. Oregon.
what's with Oregon? They're not looking solid right now, so you can't write them off just yet. But there are so many teams that are in the middle that it's hard to see how this is going to shake out just yet.
Yeah, I think that for Purdue especially, their schedule looks much more manageable than it did at the beginning of the season. Notre Dame and Oregon certainly have not been as good as people thought. Oregon especially has really struggled for 2 weeks. Their offensive line is rough, and that's the strength of Purdue's team is getting to the quarterback. And so one of the strengths anyway. And so I do think that game's in West Lafayette. I don't think it's impossible that Purdue can win that game. And then Penn State. They play Penn State as well, and Penn State just struggled against Bowling Green. They were losing by 10 points late in the second quarter to Bowling Green. That game is also in West Lafayette. So you get 3 of these games: Notre Dame, Oregon, Penn State in West Lafayette. You assume before the season all 3 of those were losses, and then obviously the loss to Ohio State as well. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if Purdue won at least one of those games. And if you win at least one of those games, it starts to feel like it's much more manageable to get to a bowl, right? Because like you said, no one in this league has really been super impressive outside of Ohio State. I like USC. They did fine against LSU. I'm not sure how good LSU is. We'll see. But I mean, Wisconsin hasn't looked great. Illinois looked actually pretty impressive against Kansas. That's a tougher game than I think I expected at the beginning of the season. Nebraska, but Northwestern, there's not a whole lot there. Michigan State, there's not a whole lot there, even though they beat Maryland. So Purdue, there is a path to a bowl game here. You just got to win one of those big 4, and that is much more likely to me than it was at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and the league itself will start to lay itself out, but I think there's just going to be some surprises here. The Big Ten itself is, like I said, mentioned, it's top heavy, which is not great for a league that has 18 teams in it. I worked for 2 days to put together my first Big Ten Power Index, and I felt like I was constructing the AP Top 25. I'm like, holy cow, it took so long when you go through every team. But I was kind of surprised where I found myself with these teams after. I'm like, but my list is different than you're going to see the AP Top 25. You won't find Michigan still benefiting from Michigan of last year, which they still are. They're still ranked. And I'm like, I thought Michigan was suspect to begin with because of all they had lost, and they were exposed at home by Texas. Texas is a good team, but they were manhandled. They basically did nothing. They scored in the fourth quarter. So I'm like, yeah, it's going to be not a great year for Michigan. So, but the SEC right now has 7 out of the top 6 teams in the AP poll, which AP poll only means so much because people are still voting on names from last year. Notre Dame, Florida State, those teams that were in the top 10 early and have shown to not be a top 10 team. But that's why I'm so grateful that the College Football Committee waits until deep into the season to start, because all these polls right now are just prognostications. They're just beliefs, but they're beliefs on last year, and you can no longer believe off of last year any year, because every year these teams are going to be drastically different unless we get to a point to where there's so much less change, but I'm not expecting that. Indiana, for example, the national media, of course, they see a 3-8 or 3-9 team, a 1-8 Big Ten team, and that's how they've been judged. Well, if you cover the team like I do, like you do, you know that's not the case. If you're looking at it that way, you're going to make a mistake. And same with Purdue. Hudson Card looked good. Their offense looked good. They looked clean. That's very, very important for Ryan Walters going into this game. The negative for Purdue is they didn't get a second game. Bye weeks in the second week are the most ridiculous thing that there can be. No team in college athletics needs a bye after 1 week of play. The whole point of a bye was to give you a little rest, give your teams a chance to kind of maybe recuperate if things. And yes, I know they have to be staggered, but you don't have to start week 1, man. I mean, that's because they added a stupid week 0. So now we've got a week 0, which is ignorant, and a week 2 bye, which is twice as ignorant.
Yeah. I mean, and so now the thing is that, like, you have to stagger the buys, but everyone gets 2 buys. So everyone gets 2 bye weeks this year. And so you kind of you seeing them early in the season. I mean, Ball State had a week 1 bye. They didn't play in week 1. They started the season later than everyone else. They were the very last team in the entire country to play their first game, which I thought was pretty funny. So yeah, it's with 2 buys, the staggering means that you kind of got to get it early in the season for some of these teams. But yeah, I mean, it does give. Purdue was actually hopeful that they would be able to get some guys back from injury because they had that week 2 bye, guys who were hurt early in the season, hurt in fall camp, basically. They were hoping to be able to get those guys back. They are getting Corey Stewart, their starting left tackle, back. He missed week 1. So that's a big deal for them. They were hoping to get Nyland Green, their top cornerback, off the shelf. He is unfortunately not going to play against Notre Dame. That's disappointing for Purdue, I think, because he was one of their top transfer portal pickups in the offseason. They really like him. And obviously you want to have good corners in order to be able to get upfield and make Notre Dame sweat on offense. So they have talent at that position, but they would like to have him back. So they were hoping the week 2 bye would help. In this case, it did marginally, but not quite as much as they thought.
Absolutely. So going into that Purdue Notre Dame game, what are your expectations?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. And I'm not saying that to be glib or anything like that, because, well, the future's unknowable. But no, I don't know what Notre Dame's offense is going to look like. It looked so rough against NIU, mostly because a big part of the early game plan was running the quarterback. And they ran it 5 times on the first series, scored a touchdown, went down the field easily, and then basically stopped running the quarterback the entire rest of the game. It was maybe 3 or 4 times the whole rest of the game, not at all in the second half. And there were reports yesterday that he's hurt. The Notre Dame says he's fine. He's not even on the injury report. But we did see him get hurt against NIU and have the trainers look at him. He stayed in the game, whatever. If he can't run the way they need him to run, then things change. I don't know what that's going to look like, because he said his running ability is such a big part of what they want to do on offense. It was completely absent in the final 2.5 quarters of that game against NIU. I don't know if it'll be a factor against Purdue. So it's hard for me to say, well, this is what's going to happen, because it's such an unknown about his status. And so I do think that it's going to be low scoring. I think that it's going to be kind of a grinded out type of game. My guess is that it ends up kind of like Notre Dame's game against Texas A&M, where it's close into the fourth quarter and one team makes a couple of big plays. And against Texas A&M, that was Notre Dame that made those big plays. I'm not sure who it's going to be in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if it were Purdue, but I think it's going to be close into the fourth quarter. Low scoring, maybe 24-20, somewhere in there would be my guess.
What was that score?
24-20 would be my guess.
And so
one way or the other. I'm not going to give a prediction because I don't know. I would expect Notre Dame's talent wins out, but I can't say with any type of certainty, but my guess is 24-20.
Yeah, Purdue has had some magic, and Ross Aid here back during the Jeff Brom era. They knocked off a gigantic win over Ohio State when we know how good Ohio State really was. That was a good team. And it turned out that they were a good team. It was just
the
a hell of a win.
They lost all season. It's the only game they lost all season that year. 13-1.
Yeah, and so that was a heck of a win. I don't know that they have that kind of capability. The coaching wise, they're set up. You got Ryan Walters, who's a very good coach. You've got an offensive scheme going on that is supposedly connected to the Mike Leach era in a way. But coming out of the Indiana State game, it's hard to tell because, it's like Indiana blasting Western Illinois. How much do you glean from that? Were you able to get anything from that game against Indiana State?
Yeah, I mean, what I got is that they have weapons on the outside. I think that was kind of a question mark coming into the season was, okay, You lost your best receiver in Deion Burks. He transferred to Oklahoma. What do you have at receiver? And I think they have at least two guys. They have Jamal Edrin, who they got from Florida Atlantic last year, missed all of last season with a torn ACL. They like him a lot. And then they have Leland Smith, transfer from junior college, really nice big play threat. And they like him a lot. And he had a touchdown against Indiana State. I think those guys really are kind of solve a question mark. They answer a question that Purdue had. The tight end, Max Clare, love him. I think he's going to be kind of the next great Purdue tight end in the Payne Durham mold. So they have weapons that Hudson Card can throw to. I think that was a question mark. I think Purdue answered it against Indiana State. It is Indiana State. I get it, so on and so forth. But you can kind of get an impression of who is the ball going to be thrown to. Because if they had just run the ball over ISU, then maybe it's a little bit different. You don't feel like that question was answered, but they didn't. They threw it all around the yard. Guys were getting open. Obviously, it'll be tougher sledding against Notre Dame. I think that's a given. But that was what impressed me about that game, was that they really do seem to have some weapons where that was kind of a question going in.
I asked myself after watching Indiana dismantle Western Illinois, what did I glean from that? I'm trying to find the positives, because there's no point in being negative in games that are blowouts. So you look for the positive. But sometimes you want. But the thing is, just not getting that second game for Purdue, I think it could be the difference. But has Notre Dame played one or two games?
Two. They beat Texas A&M and then lost NIU.
That's right. To me, that's the difference, is having gotten that second game, even though it was a shocking loss at home, no less, as a big-time favorite. If Notre Dame were to lose this game, their season's shot to me. Not because they have a tough schedule. They don't. They have an easy schedule. But that's the fact. If you lose two games out of your first three, I have no faith in that team. Their next toughest game won't be to the end of the season when they play USC. And
I think the consensus is that they have to win the rest of their games to make the playoff. I think that's probably. I don't think they no matter what happens, if they lose one more, even if it's USC, they're not getting in. And so they know that their season is on the line now. That they expected to be a playoff team at the beginning of the season. They still expect to be a playoff team. Obviously, things need to change drastically for that to happen. They need to win the rest of their games. I don't have a lot of faith that they can do that based on what I saw on Saturday, unless something drastically changes on offense, which I don't think it will. So I think that you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right that the season is over essentially if they lose this game. It'll be tough to kind of bounce back from that. But it is one of those things where I don't think they were unmotivated against NIU. It wasn't a team that came out flat. They scored a touchdown on their first possession. They didn't play well, but they just got beat. And so I have trouble seeing them just kind of getting off the mat and just going in and blowing the doors off Purdue, which the spread seems to suggest they kind of will. So we'll see. I think I think it's close. I think it's down to the wire. I think one or two big plays decides it.
I find it hard to imagine a team making the playoffs that lost at home to Northern Illinois, period. I think that's going to put you underneath of a lot, even with the mystique of Notre Dame that still seems to hold sway over a lot of people when they vote. And I think it's time to stop that. Make them earn it. Get into a damn conference. Play a schedule. Their schedule this year is ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous. And I think it's going to get worse as these years go forward and these conferences if there's more movement, it's going to become more and more difficult for Notre Dame to have what I call a solid schedule. First of all, they're a quasi member of the ACC, which is the weakest of all of the power conferences to begin with. So they're playing nobody. It's if they want to be the Notre Dame of Notre Dame, then get off the mat, join a conference, get off of your high horse and join the game, because otherwise, I don't know at what point people are going to stop believing in this facade that is still holding up pretty strongly after a long time, but it's a facade. They're a program that had a great history, has a great history, but that does not make them something they're not every year just because of that name on the chest.
Yeah, I mean, and to be fair to them, like they've been one of the top 10 to 15 programs in the country over the last decade, right? Like they are not some team that's just kind of hanging out and playing football. They've won 10 games 6 of the last 8 years now, and they have a decent chance to do it again this year. So it's not like they're like the year they went to the playoff. They went to the playoff in 2018 and 2020 because they went undefeated during the regular season and beat some really good teams, right? It wasn't Mystique that got them into the playoffs that year. It was an undefeated record. So they and they expected to do that again this year. And obviously the loss to NIU was an enormous disappointment. And they're not as good as we might have expected, mostly because their quarterback is not as good as we expected. I expected a lot more from Riley Leonard than we've gotten. I do think it's really ridiculous to even talk about this because we're so far away from it. I do think that Notre Dame that wins this last 10 games in a row probably gets in. I think it's really hard to keep an 11-1 team out of a 12-team playoff, especially if they go beat USC on the road, which we expect USC to be a good team, so that helps. But yeah, it's going to take that, I think, and so I'm fascinated to see how that plays out because they didn't look good on Saturday. They looked like their offense cannot move the football, and I don't know if that's going to change against Purdue or against any team the rest of the season.
And USC already has the best win in the Big Ten Conference, winning on a neutral site over LSU. I expect USC to be a pretty damn good team come season's end and at home. So that's going to be a very, very tall task for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think that if they win out, they go 11-1, they beat USC at the end of the season, then I think, you're probably talking about a team that's finishing 9th or 10th, somewhere in there. But again, it's a very tall task. So basically, it's like we don't have to talk about it unless it happens. And if it happens, then they're probably fine. But it's unlikely in my mind to happen because of what we saw on Saturday. I don't think what we saw on Saturday was a fluke. I think this team is just not quite as good as they were expected to be, mostly because the quarterback is not as good as we expected him to be. So.
Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us. We've got more coming up. Indiana takes on UCLA in a Big Ten opener for the Hoosiers and the Bruins, and plenty of other big-time Big Ten games. We'll talk about it all and more when we come back. Brought to you by our good friends from The Hard Truth and Andy Moore Honda here at The Hard Truth Studios.
This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East.
If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@indyhomepros.com. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer.
Country living is just a swing away. It can be hard to find the exact home that fits your family's needs, so there couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf Community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Ravesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details.
Know a team or group needing a fundraiser? Boost Fundraising raises more money faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member. Free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all. Sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, and community groups. Go to boostfundraising.com and be sure to enter the promo code COYLE, that's COYLE, to receive a discounted fundraiser.
Looking for someone to cater your next corporate event, family reunion, or tailgate? To some, a garnish may be nothing more than just a decoration put last on a plate. But in Bloomington, catering starts with Garnish Catering, serving all of Bloomington and surrounding areas. Garnish Catering is waiting to help make your next event one to remember. Planning a great event shouldn't have to be stressful. Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group.
In the market for a new or used vehicle? Well, nobody beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
Segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Studios on this Wednesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Hard Truth Distilling Company and their incredible line of products, sour mash bourbons and hard rye, toasted coconut rum. That sounds like something you'd enjoy, Dylan.
Yeah, that's me.
And I'm not saying that I wouldn't enjoy it myself.
Oh, absolutely.
I wish I had a little toasted coconut rum in the coffee beverage, but it's straight coffee with some hazelnut.
I'll wake you up. Hazelnut. I'll wake you up in the morning, Jim.
It will during the but in the afternoons too here. So hope everyone's having a great middle of the week. As it seems like a short week, Dylan, but I guess it's because I'm traveling, and the end of the week cuts that out. I'm heading out to Pasadena tomorrow for this weekend's Indiana UCLA game, and the stature of this game, while coaches don't like to put stature on anything because every game is important, and I get that. And it doesn't matter if you're playing Western Illinois or UCLA. You got to win both. You need to win both. Now, losing to UCLA is not like losing to Western Illinois, granted, but a loss is a loss. So they look at it as a win is a win, which it is. Now, in any situation over your lifetime, there is no way Indiana would have been perceived as a favorite going out to this game. And Las Vegas has them as a favorite, which still surprised me a little bit. I didn't think that they would give the credence to the Hoosiers just yet until they actually did something of note, of stature, like winning in the Rose Bowl, which I fully expect them to do this weekend. But they've made it a 2.5 point favorite. At least that's what when the line came out, it's what it was, which that's huge. You're going to first of all, it's a Big Ten game. You're going to Pasadena in the Rose Bowl as the favorite. Now it's 2.5 points. So that's kind of like five points, really. Home team or home game is usually worth a field goal. So that's close to 6 points in reality. But I think Indiana wins this game, not 77-3, but their defense has looked pretty solid, except for the moments where it hasn't, which has oddly been in a single series in both games.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest things is that there needs to be a focus throughout the game from this defense, right? UCLA they have talent on that offense. Their quarterback Ethan Garbers is a dual threat guy, moves very well. Isn't a great thrower, but is good enough to really make it hurt if you're not on your P's and Q's. The receiver, Rico Flores Jr., I covered him last year. He's a transfer from Notre Dame. He's a talented guy. The only reason he transferred was because he wanted to be closer to home. He's a California kid. And so I do think that this is going to be easily the defense's toughest task so far. And I know people look at UCLA beating Hawaii 16-13 and think, well, UCLA can't really score. I don't think that's the case. I think that they are another team that had last week off, and so they're probably going to have some things fixed. They're going to have some new things installed for this game, and so I do think that is going to be something where if Indiana's defense is not focused throughout the game, they are going to give up some points, and I think that they will be. I think part of the problem for both, you talked about the one drive that they weren't basically in both games, was that they got a lead. And it was kind of the mental focus slipped a little bit where they had a lead. If the game is close, they've been really good at just being around the ball. And so I think this game is going to be relatively close. I don't think Indiana's going to go in there and win by 2 or 3 touchdowns. That's not my assumption. So I do think that it's going to be one of those things where you're going to see, okay, we're into the fourth quarter now. Where is this defense in terms of finishing a game? And I think that is actually something that we're going to see that Indiana is pretty good at as the year goes on because of all these guys they got from James Madison and other teams from the Sun Belt that were good last year. And so I think that we haven't had a chance to see that yet because they won both games convincingly. I'm excited to see what this team does in the fourth quarter of a close game.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things I'm looking forward to seeing. First of all, the defense against a team that they're going to have to put up with for 4 quarters. UCLA is going to fight for 4 quarters, and they have better talent, like you just mentioned. They have guys that have speed. They have guys that are just different that the first 2 teams they've played in Florida International and Western Illinois just don't have. There's just a fact to that. Now, obviously, they don't have as much as some others, but it is going to be a true test. First of all, it's on the road. Road games are just inherently a test. You're out of your comfort zone. Think about going when it's not for everybody, but when you're sleeping in a hotel, you're not at home. You're just not as comfortable. And I know that might sound silly, but there's just truth to it. When you're taken out of your rhythm, your entire rhythm is slightly disrupted. These guys are used to doing it, but that doesn't make it easier. Now, if those guys can just fall asleep at will, I'm just talking about myself who struggle with that. I hate it. I want to be in my surroundings, in my situation, because I know I know what to expect. But traveling, now fan-wise, fortunately, this is not a situation where they're going into Michigan or going into Ohio State or Penn State or a team that has a great following. UCLA doesn't have a great following either, which should be surprising since they're in the second largest city in America. But that's just not the case. What are they drawing? Like 30,000 a game?
Yeah, it's not a football city. Like the NFL doesn't draw in Los, like the Rams and Chargers don't have great attendance. Like most of the fans that come in for Rams and Chargers games are people from out of town who want to see a football game, right? Like and
they built like a $50 billion stadium for this.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not a football town, and so UCLA doesn't draw particularly well. USC doesn't draw particularly well, to be honest with you. Like it's not like. The Coliseum is generally pretty full, but that's not considered one of the greatest crowds to have to play in front of. So I do think that it won't be quite as much of a difficult road game as obviously, like you said, going to Michigan, going to Ohio State, even going to Penn State, going to Oregon is going to be very difficult at some point for IU. But this is not that. So it's going to be maybe it's a ramp up, right? You're going to have some tougher games later in the year. This is the next level of it. And so I think that it's good to see IU have an opportunity to really make a statement early in the season on the road, but not in a place that's impossible to play. That's really going to kind of jar you out of your settings. That sets up well for Indiana.
Absolutely, because I'm curious. I'm really curious to see what the fan support is going to be. Now, for those that live out in that area, as someone just mentioned, Indiana, there's an IU Alumni Association chapter in Los Angeles, which that's not a surprise when you have the second largest living alumni in the country, and it's not surprising since it's the second largest city in America. But I'm going to be interested to see not only how many people show up from that area, but then how many people travel. Going to Las Vegas, that's the travel, but it was basketball, and they showed out. I mean, showed out for that game. I'm still shocked. It was an 8-2 kind of a situation over Arizona, which how the hell you do that when Arizona is 2 hours from campus? I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to it, man, and it should be a fun one. And I think Indiana wins that game. What other Big Ten games? Alabama at Wisconsin. Yeah. Alabama struggled. I don't want to say struggled, but they didn't look like the DeBoer teams that we're used to. So, and they're getting 15.5 points or giving away 15.5 points. So that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin hasn't looked particularly good either. I'm really skeptical of what they're trying to do there. They basically tried to install the air raid at Wisconsin, and it just has not worked. Their offense is not good. They've gotten away from the identity that made them successful for so long. And I understand that Luke Fickell came in and wanted to establish something new, and he picked the wrong guy to do it. I am not a believer in Phil Longo as the offensive coordinator. That's a Nick Sheridan level higher to me. So I expect Alabama to win that game. I think it'll be a good early test for them, kind of just get your bear, because they didn't look good against South Florida. I think South Florida is actually a pretty good team. But the week before they played Western Kentucky and they just shoved them into the earth. Like it was 63-0 and it could have been 120-0. It wasn't even like they outgained them by 600 yards, and they looked like every bit as good as any down in Alabama team you could think of. And I think Western Kentucky is a pretty good team. So I'm interested to see which team is closer to what they actually are. Is it the team that blitzed WKU, or is it the team that was in a game for 3 quarters against South Florida? And we'll see. We'll get a better indication this week against Wisconsin.
Absolutely. I'm interested. I haven't seen anything from Wisconsin yet, but it's so early. I don't know. They have not exactly struggled. I mean, but they haven't exactly looked like a world beater either. So no. I find it hard to believe and that Kalen DeBoer is going to go up there and lose. I just think that he is. I'm surprised that they haven't looked a little stronger earlier. But new team, new concepts, new everything. It takes a minute, but we'll see. I don't know if they cover that spread. I wouldn't bet that game. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't cover the spread.
Right. Exactly. I think that's kind of where I'm at. Is I see Alabama winning, and then it's just a question of whether it's a blowout or not. I don't think it will be. I think Wisconsin can do enough on defense to slow them down and maybe force a couple turnovers. That place is going to be nuts. They don't really get a ton of big non-conference games that go up there. So that place is going to be absolutely insane, and should be able to keep Wisconsin in at least for the first half, would be my guess.
Looking forward to it, man. What are you doing this weekend?
I'll be in West Lafayette for Notre Dame, Purdue. I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. Really excited to see that game. It should be a great atmosphere up there in West Lafayette. That's one of the biggest non-conference games they've had in quite a while up there at Purdue. So I'm excited to see the crowd there as well.
Any other games that are standing out in your mind besides Indiana UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, without looking at the schedule off the top of my head, I can't think of a great one. I think that Wisconsin Alabama is kind of the game of the week, at least in the Big Ten. I do love Indiana UCLA. I think that is going to be a clarifying game for both teams. I do everything tells me that Indiana is going to win that game. I think that they look so good in their first 2 games overall. UCLA, I think, is headed for a rough season, and the coaching advantage for IU is just so high because, Kirsten Getty is a veteran. Deshaun Foster is coaching his second game. It's just what it is. They have an advantage there. I think that should be enough to get them over the hump, even if it's not quite the dominant, like, we're here, everyone look at us blow out that Indiana hopes for, which would be great. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but I think they win, but it's just so hard to look at it and be dispassionate about a team that has they've struggled in Big Ten road games over the years. It has been a while since they won one with a big road crowd in attendance, so we'll see.
Yeah, and thus far, two teams that have surprised me, Illinois.
Yes.
And Nebraska, and Nebraska is not a big surprise, but the play of their true freshman quarterback, that was a little bit eye-opening.
Yes, he's good. Like that was he's 5-star kid. Like he is what they expected him to be. But I think that he is what they expected him to be. And so, like, a guy who is at least poised, can handle the offense early on, and their defense is nasty. It is really, really good. And so I expected them to be good before the season. They've met every one of my expectations. They took Colorado behind the woodshed, as I expected them to do. And that game against Illinois, they play Illinois next week. I am fascinated by that game. That could be a team that one of those teams is going to finish 5th or 6th in the Big Ten.
I agree with you. And then another big game this weekend is Oregon State for two reasons. Number one, Oregon has looked a little shaky, and if they were to get knocked off, that's going to be, to me, that'll knock them out of the potential playoffs because of how they've looked, and that would be a bad loss. Then Oregon State comes to West Lafayette, host Purdue next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's obviously kind of a grudge match for Oregon State, right? It's like, hey, you guys left the conference, you ran out on us, and now we have no place to go. Thanks a lot. Like, there's going to be some motivated players in that game, would be my guess. I don't think Oregon State has the juice to win that game, but they should be able to have some fun kind of knocking Oregon around a little bit.
Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Thanks, my friend.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me, and enjoy Los Angeles this weekend.
We will try to. We've got more Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company coming up next from the Hard Truth Studios right after this break.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington.
In the market for a new or used vehicle? Well, nobody beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
Looking for someone to cater your next corporate event, family reunion, or tailgate? To some, a garnish may be nothing more than just a decoration put last on a plate. But in Bloomington, catering starts with Garnish Catering. Serving all of Bloomington and surrounding areas, Garnish Catering is waiting to help make your next event one to remember. Planning a great event shouldn't have to be stressful. Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group.
If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@indyhomepros.com. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer. The Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Maria Island, Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Maria Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information.
Country living is just a swing away. It can be hard to find the exact home that fits your family's needs, so there couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revestco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Studios here on this Wednesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the great folks at Hard Truth Distilling Company. Right in the heart of central Indiana, beautiful Brown County. If you haven't visited that distillery, it is a sight to behold, a great restaurant, and all kinds of fun things to do in a beautiful area. Cal Neddenriep from the Indy Star. How are you, sir?
Good. How you doing, Jim?
Good. It's been a busy week or busy month for you, I guess, because you're a month deep into the high school football scene already, and it's in full bore now as high school is going, college is going, NFL is going, so even little Pop Warner, we've got everybody playing right now. So, but how's the high school season going?
That's going good. Yeah, week 4 already here. It's hard to believe we're that far along. Football season always seems to fly by for some reason, but yeah, looking forward to another good weekend and a lot of good games on the schedule this week.
Any surprises? Was it 3 weeks now? Is this week 3 or week 4?
Week 4. Yep.
Any surprise? What are the surprises in the first 3 weeks?
I mean, I probably start with Ben Davis starting 0-2. You know, they were obviously the state champions from last year and got off to a tough start, losing to Cathedral and then upset by Avon in the second game, but then came back last week. You know, had a good win against Pike, and now play Center Grove this Friday, which that's a rematch of last year's semi-state game. You know, so we'll get a chance to see kind of where they're at right now. Center Grove has a lot of different players too, but they got a huge win last week against Louisville Trinity, the defending state champ in 6A, and basically the top team again down there in Kentucky. So that was impressive, 24-10, kind of shut them down. And so now, Ben Davis didn't play Center Grove last year in the season because Ben Davis got IMG Academy for 1 year. So this game back on the schedule, it's always a good one. You ask some other, I would say, from a standpoint of, surprises on the good side. I mean, Pike was 2-0 through 2 weeks. They hadn't been a very good program really, or hadn't had a lot of wins here in recent years. So that was a good start for them. They beat Fishers in a game that I don't think anybody really thought they would win, in week 2. So got off to a good start there. Lost to Ben Davis in week 3. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, I think Warren Central not giving up a point yet this season's a kind of a surprise. You don't expect that through 3 weeks. So been a really good start for them as well.
And you mentioned in your upcoming this week's high school football blurb that Center Grove has a very unique opportunity at hand. You mentioned that they beat Louisville Trinity last week, which is one of the top teams in the country year in, year out, usually Kentucky's top 6A team. And they go down there and win handily, which that is a huge thing. And now they have the opportunity to beat Indiana's defending state champion. That is a very unique opportunity, especially for a team that has a loss next to their name.
Yeah, I don't know how many times that has ever happened, or even you get that opportunity to do that, and then even do it. So yeah, that's and I don't even know how to research that necessarily, but it's definitely unique, and I think Center Grove's probably the pick to win this weekend, but yeah, I think it impressive. Their program generally, how close they were to winning a fourth state championship last year. If they were able to pull that game out against Ben Davis, they probably go on and beat Crown Point. Considering how easily Ben Davis beat Crown Point. So just a nod to their program in general. I mean, they're right on the cusp of winning 4 in a row, which that's just not done. Hadn't been done. Warren did it. What was that? 03 to 06. That's basically the only time that's been done at the 5A 6A level in the current format or the modern era or whatever you want to call it. So it just doesn't happen. It's hard enough to win back to back at that level. You just don't see that happen. I don't think it happened at all in the time we've had 6A. So, but yeah, pretty unique chance for them. I don't know if they're the favorite to win state this year. Probably not, but they're definitely in the mix.
Anybody surprising you early on this week? You've got 3 games in the books. Anybody that's been a positive surprise?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, from I'd say, it's at the 6A level. I'd have to go back and look here. I would say, maybe the fact that Warren, I mentioned they hadn't given up a point yet. I mean, that's a surprise. I would say Lawrence North maybe has surprised people a little bit at being 3-0 so far. They've got they should be 5-0 actually. You look ahead, they've got North Central and Tech this week, and then they play Ben Davis and Warren in week 6 and 7. They should be 5-0 going into that Ben Davis game, which would be interesting for that program, which has kind of been under Pat Mallory has been really kind of thriving, or to an extent of we haven't seen them do this in a long time. So I think that'll be obviously a test for them once they get to Ben Davis, and they should be 5-0. Surprised last week to see Lutheran lose. They had a 45 game winning streak, lost to Triton Central 16-13, and I really had a story about that earlier this week. Tim Abel, from Triton, he's done a great job building that program, but they had to drive down the field, scored late in the game, and then held off Lutheran at the end. Lutheran's battling some injuries, but even still, just what they've done the last several years, winning 45 games in a row. That's just, I think it's the 3rd longest streak in state history. So, that was one of the scores that stuck out from last week. But, I don't know if we've seen a ton of surprise. Pike being 2-0, I saw that game against Fishers. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. So for them to get to 2-0, but I don't know if we've seen a ton of surprises just yet.
And something I want to bring up, Purdue only having played 1 game this year, but a solid win over Indiana State. An incredible opportunity this week as they will host Notre Dame the week after Notre Dame loses embarrassingly at home to Northern Illinois. And Purdue has a solid shot to win this game now. Indiana, they head to UCLA, and they'll have the national TV eyes and a national audience on them, and they're looking good. We're about to see maybe college football in this state potentially rise to a level to where I don't think it ever has.
That'd be great. That sounds like fun. That IU UCLA game I think is really interesting. You looked at IU schedule and it's like, man, if they can get this one, they got a chance to get off to a really fun start. Yeah, possibly.
6-0, baby. I'm calling it.
Yeah. Because what do they have? Maryland? I don't even know for sure, but it looked like
Charlotte after their last non-conference game after UCLA is Charlotte, then which is at home. Then they have Maryland at home, and then you go play Northwestern on the pitch up there, which Northwestern not looking good right now.
Yeah, they're not very good. So yeah, you got a chance to get off to a really good start, and that's what you want is some wind beneath your wings a little bit as you start a new coaching regime there, and got a chance to do that now. I don't care who you're playing. It doesn't really matter. But, you go, UCLA I think is very beatable. So, if you can get a little momentum going, it gets everybody excited. And if you can get to a bowl game, I mean, shoot, that's progress.
Absolutely. But it also, I with all of those teams, right, if they're able to rise up, there has to be carryover to the high school level with either more enthusiasm, recruiting is going to change. Indiana has probably been the least successful recruiting this state, behind Purdue, behind Notre Dame, but that stuff can all change very quickly. And we've seen things change at the college level with this transfer portal. I think it has really started to even things out.
Yeah, I mean, it's I talked to Davion Chandler from LN last week, about that, and just kind of the good vibes, from the program. And he was down there for the first game. I'm not sure if he went to the second game or not. I think he was planning on going, but no, they played the same night, so he couldn't go. But I know he planned on getting that back down there again. But just talking to, he said he was talking to Omar Cooper, and just when he was going through the recruiting process, just feeling better about sort of where the program was, and just the things that Omar told him that were on the positive side, just about the coaching staff and kind of just the things that are being said and the kind of the positive energy. So now you get that. That's probably pretty common when you have a coaching change, I would think. But then when you can get a few wins behind you, it creates another level of momentum. You see it all the time in recruiting where, you win a few games and you get a commit, and then, all of a sudden you get more players interested who want to play with that player and be part of something that's positive, instead of, you see it on the other side too, where it's like there's coaching, people don't know if the coach is coming back. And then all of a sudden, you get decommitments and people aren't committing to that program. So there's definitely I think especially in football, a real momentum, the real chance to grab momentum and run with it.
You mentioned Omar Cooper, former Lawrence North grad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pro Football Focus had Omar Cooper, a former Indiana high school football player, as the number one graded wideout last week. Number one in all of college football. That is huge. Huge for a kid from Indiana. Not that Indiana doesn't produce talent. They do, like every place, but they don't have the numbers, say, as Texas or Ohio, as Pennsylvania. But trust me, they still produce talent. And if you don't believe me, Omar Cooper, the number one graded wide receiver in the nation last week. And fortunately for Indiana, they also had the number 3 graded wide receiver, which they're making noise. But that aside, I can see someone like Kurt Cignetti using as best he can the talent that comes out of this state once he's able to start recruiting. And once he's able to start recruiting this state, I think he is going to have an effect just by being around him. And I think that the response he's going to get from potential players is going to be nothing but solid.
Yeah, that's cool about it. I didn't know that about Omar. So yeah, he was a fun, player to cover. His dad still helps out coaching at LN. So, I've enjoyed covering him over the years. But I didn't even know that. He was obviously a great athlete. He's a 3-sport athlete, did long jump and was a big part of their basketball program, and, got hurt. I think it was his junior year, and wasn't able to play the whole season, but he took a seat next to Jack Kiefer there on the LN bench and helped basically one of the assistant coaches for him. So, he's a guy who's been around it for a long time, and it's cool to see him have that success. I didn't even know he's ranked number 1 in among receivers, but that's pretty cool that has worked out for him there, and hopefully continues.
Absolutely. What's up for you this weekend, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I got a couple things coming. We'll have our normal predictions tomorrow, and then got a story this morning on a Cardinal Ritter kid who, you talk about in-state prospects, and he's one of the he's only a junior, but he just started playing football last year, and his name's Terry Robinson. He's about 6'4", 250. Defensive end. So, right now Louisville is definitely on him and bringing him down for a visit, and Miami of Ohio, and then some other, Purdue, IU, Iowa, Kentucky, those are schools he's kind of looking at him. It's just kind of right now it's all projection for a guy like that. He's got to get better, but it's pretty cool. His grandpa actually was on he was the first season of American Gladiators. He was one of the finalists. He was one of the finalists for it. So, and I didn't even know that. I know his grandpa a little bit, but I didn't realize he was on that. But yeah, pretty cool background on him, and I think he's got a bright future ahead of him.
Looking forward to it. Make sure you're giving Kyle Neddenriep a follow and following his content at the Indy Star. Appreciate you, my friend.
You bet, and go Tigers. They're only 3 games out of the wild card, so who would have thought?
Oh, Rick Bozich, who's coming up next, is definitely jealous with his Chicago White Sox squad. I'm sure they're right behind you.
80 games under 500, so hard to believe.
Yeah, baby. Go, you know what? If you're going to do something, do it the best.
Do it all the way. Go all the way.
That's right. Kyle Neddenriep, appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. We've got more Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming up from the Hard Truth Studios right after this.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle with the Fresh Fork. Chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep. Proudly fueling IU athletes and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. The Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use promo code RADIO20 and get $20 off of your first order.
Country living is just a swing away. It can be hard to find the exact home that fits your family's needs, so there couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouth-watering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer.
Looking for someone to cater your next corporate event, family reunion, or tailgate? To some, a garnish may be nothing more than just a decoration put last on a plate. But in Bloomington, catering starts with Garnish Catering. Serving all of Bloomington and surrounding areas, Garnish Catering is waiting to help make your next event one to remember. Planning a great event shouldn't have to be stressful. Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group.
If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty at cheryl@indyhomepros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@indyhomepros.com. In the market for a new or used vehicle? Well, nobody beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Studios on this Wednesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio brought to you by the great folks at Hard Truth Distilling Company. Make sure you are stopping and grabbing those products and send a picture to me. Joined now by the great Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. And Rick, man, normally it's basketball that consumes this area, but Notre Dame, Purdue, Indiana, Louisville, not so much Kentucky, but have all looked decent up till now. Notre Dame, the one exception, they lost at home to Northern Illinois. But if Kentucky can solve their issues, I cannot imagine having 5 area football programs that are, average or better.
Yeah, probably been a while since that happened, but obviously this week the spotlight's on Indiana, getting to go to the Rose Bowl, favored against UCLA in a primetime game on NBC that'll be televised across the country on Saturday night, with a chance to go to 3-0 and then come home against Charlotte and go to 4-0. So this is a huge game. I'm not going to give them the. I'm not going to give them the.
Baby, I'm going there.
I'm not going to give them the Maryland game yet. They haven't beat UCLA yet.
I know.
Let's see what happens, but this is the biggest IU football game probably since that Cincinnati home game a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of 2 games in the last several years that had just gigantic implications. The UCLA game, of course, which we can always speculate on what would have happened if they didn't lose their linebacker. But and then the Ohio State game, the COVID year, which they lost by a touchdown, and they were 6-1 that season. But this is a different situation. It's a different era. It's the first season for a new regime that is getting off to the start that some of us expected. And I think it's, like I said, I'm not trying to look ahead, but I'm thinking I've talked about a path to 6-0 a lot in the preseason. And then I was kind of worried about Maryland, but they lose at home to Michigan State. And I'm like, yeah, Indiana's going to have 3 more games under their belt and they're going to be at home. They're not going to lose to Maryland. I don't see that happening, but that's putting the cart before the horse. You mentioned how big this game is because of the national eyeballs, because of the Indiana, of course, is a program that has not earned respect from many people. That could start to change this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's an opportunity to change the narrative around the program, get people talking about Kurt Cignetti and what he's all about. I mean, you look at the UCLA as we've talked about all summer, as a new head coach who's never been a head coach anywhere. They did not look impressive in their opening game against Hawaii. They lost guys during the offseason and assistant coaches out of the transfer portal. And their fan support, while is fine, you're playing in a 88,000, 89,000 seat stadium that's probably going to be half full.
Yeah, at best. And I think that they've tarped off some areas of the Rose Bowl, which to make it look a little bit better. Which, in all fairness, it's fair. I mean, this is not Ohio State and Alabama coming into play, so who has this great following. What does the Rose Bowl hold? Like 100,000?
I thought it was like 88 or 89,000. I don't know. I can look it up.
I was actually thinking that too, and I don't know why the 100 jumped in, but
yeah. And the thing is, I'm not saying Indiana's going to have a huge crowd, but they'll have several thousand fans there. I mean, I know 89,702. There's a lot of IU alums in Southern California. It's their first time ever to see IU play in the area, and I've heard anecdotally of several dozen people say on Twitter or message boards or whatever that they're planning on going to the game. It's a once in a lifetime experience to this point to actually see Indiana play in the Rose Bowl. So there's some juice about it. The part of it though that's Indiana is still the team traveling. And they are the team adjusting to the time change, and it's not all in their favor.
No, and I do think I've the sound from Deshaun Watson, and I literally skipped through 3 questions because it was just like one-word answers. And I'm like, boy, he just doesn't. He sounds. I hate to say this, like a high school coach who just doesn't have a lot to say because he's still learning. And I don't mean that to be negative towards him. It's that you can just tell when I listen to, say, Kurt Cignetti and his answers of how he addresses things. there's the definitive difference.
Yeah, he's just a guy that doesn't understand or doesn't accept the idea that being the head coach, part of the job is you're the face of the program. You set the agenda in terms of what the message is. And unless you're winning, the way he's doing things isn't going to work. You can just contrast it. What Cignetti is the one who is responsible for a lot of the energy and excitement around IU football since he was hired, because his messaging has been consistent. It's been, what's the right word? It's been unusual. It's not what we usually hear from an Indiana football coach. He's been somewhat, very confident, a little bit combative, challenging to his players and his fans to quit thinking about the program the way they've thought about it in the past. And Foster, I didn't see what he said this week, but I did see his interaction with the media at Big Ten Media Day, and he looked like a guy who hadn't been coached by the SID department to say, hey, dude, this is like a chance. Rick Pitino used to always explain it as you're getting a free commercial. So anytime the media wants to talk to you, that you're getting free airtime, it's free. It's a free commercial to sell yourself. And Deshaun Foster's not doing that.
No, and I agree with you. He's got to learn. But also, I wonder if UCLA itself is in the same position that Indiana had been in for many, many years, and that is not caring about football enough. Mick Cronin seems to just now be getting the NIL support needed to support the UCLA basketball program, which, like Indiana, was the face of their athletics, not the football team. But football is the engine that drives the train, and especially moving into the Big Ten, they're going to have to either play with the big boys or get left behind. And right now, in my personal Big Ten Power Index, I've got UCLA as one of the bottom two teams.
Yeah, I mean, UCLA has advantages and they have major disadvantages. As to your point about not understanding about football, I mean, if that's the case, their athletic director needs to be fired, because everybody needs to understand about football now. And they just made the move to join the Big Ten with Washington, Oregon, and USC, so they better step up their game. And hiring this guy when his sole qualification is that he was a UCLA alum seems like a bad move. They went from Chip Kelly, a guy who had Oregon in the national championship game and was a head coach in the NFL, to a guy with no head coaching experience. That seems like a bad move. Like, I don't know why they didn't hire somebody with a little bit more experience. But the positive for UCLA is you're in LA. The population makes it a huge recruiting area, and you're in the Big Ten. You got a lot to sell. The negative is in the city of Los Angeles, they're not very important. You got two NFL teams. You got the Dodgers, who are really, the favorite probably to win the National League for sure, if not the World Series. You've got the Lakers. You got the Clippers are moving into a new arena. You got NHL hockey. You've got USC football.
The Angels.
Yeah, USC is a bigger brand in football with Lincoln Riley. They're spending $9 million on a coach. What's UCLA probably spending like $3 million? So it's not UCLA. This is a great time to play UCLA. It really is. They're in a transition that it looks like they haven't handled very well. And if you're just lining them up and you say, who would you rather have coaching your team, Curt Cignetti or Deshaun Foster? It's a no-brainer.
Absolutely. I mean, one has tons of experience and is treating this, as Curt said, as we played this yesterday. This is a business trip for them, and that's how he has his team looking at this. This is a business trip, and that's how they have to focus on every single thing throughout this season and remain focused if they're going to surprise people, which I expect them to do that. I have a hunch that Curt Cignetti has that ability.
Yeah, I would think so. It's hard. It's harder than it used to be, though, because of social media, unless you take phones away from guys. And I don't know. Are they going on Thursday or Friday? Are they going Thursday night?
They must be leaving Friday, because the Inside Indiana Football Coaches Show with Curt Cignetti is still tomorrow night at Hoosier Hanks East.
Okay, so then they're leaving Friday morning, I guess. And heading out there, and you got one night in the hotel, then you fly back
That
after the
night.
game,
Yeah.
get home early in the morning, and then bus back from Indy. I've read that they were flying out of Indy, not Bloomington, so it's a big plane. Yeah, I mean it's their first road trip under a new head coach. You've got a bunch of guys on the team that have played college football at different places, and every school handles road trips differently. But it's there's not going to Universal Studio, they're not going to Disneyland, they're not going to go see Malibu or anything like that, or they're not going out to eat any fancy restaurant. They're going to the hotel, they're going to eat, they'll have a walkthrough, they'll go to the game, and then they'll come home. So it is a business trip.
And that's what it has to be. I mean, especially for Indiana right now, as they're looking to build something, build this brand. And Kurt Cignetti, that's exactly how he's treating it, because he's looking at building this thing. He wants to do what he says and not be looked upon as someone who just spouts off, which I don't think that. But you've got to prove it. A lot of people say, "Oh, they got to prove it to me. They got to do this." Well, whatever. Even though last week was against an inferior opponent, they broke a record, Rick, that was 100 sat for 123 years. That's, I don't care who you're playing. That's something.
Yeah, I mean, I watched part of the game. I mean, they did what they needed to do, which is stay focused on what the task was. And after he subbed and put second and third teamers in, they still performed.
Didn't make mistakes. That's the huge
mistakes,
thing.
Yeah. But I also hesitate to take too much away from it, because blocking those kinds of guys or
It's easy. It's like blocking me and you.
Yeah, or dealing with being blocked by those guys is miles and miles and miles away what they're going to deal with once they get in the Big Ten. So we still don't know how good their offensive and defensive lines are. I think the receivers are pretty good. I think the running backs are pretty good. But I don't know how good their offensive and defensive lines are, especially the offensive line.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the offensive and defensive lines operate against a bigger, better opponent. UCLA is still not that upper echelon, but it's probably the perfect continuous step up for Indiana. FIU, Western Illinois, now to UCLA. Then you'll get a Charlotte team that is not terrible. That will, at least be they'll put them through their paces at least. So they're going to have 4 solid workouts in these first 4 games. And I think that's just going to allow this team to go through and get better at what they're doing. And we saw a huge fall off in penalties. They in week 1, 8 offensive penalties, 0 in week 2. That means no offsides, no illegal procedures, which are mental things. So they got the mind straight, which is always a key.
Yeah, I mean, was it the first NFL game, the Ravens, where they had like all those penalties because they couldn't line up correctly? It shows you that it can be an issue for teams if they're not paying attention to what they're doing, and the Ravens weren't. But yeah, they did a good job in terms of cutting back on penalties and stuff. I'm sure their confidence should be up. I'm sure they realize the importance of this game, and we'll see if they go out there and perform. I have to admit I'm slightly surprised they're favored by 3, which means at a neutral field if the game was at IU, they'd be favored by what?
6?
Yeah.
They're about 6 or 7. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I'm like a home field game is usually worth 3 points in the mind of thinking. So the 77 points got people's attention, but not the number as much as the fact that they scored virtually every time they had the ball, except for once, I think. And that was one of the times when third or fourth string quarterback, whichever he is, Alberto Mendoza was in, and he got close to getting the first down, but didn't quite get that. But 11 touchdowns by 10 different players.
Yeah, I thought Kobe Martin looked good as a backup running back. Cooper looks like, to me, if once they really get into games that are super competitive, Cooper looks like the kind of guy who could be a difference maker. He's got just something about him as a receiver. He's got a little bit of a dynamic gear to him. We haven't really seen enough of McCulley to know if he's going to also step forward. But they got some dudes that I think can be difference makers. So, as you mentioned, Charlotte last week played North Carolina tougher than I thought they would.
Me too.
In Chapel Hill. So that game, Indiana should win, but it's not going to be a walkover. And then the next week is Maryland, which, as you mentioned, got shocked at home against Michigan State with its first-year coach. And then who's after that? Northwestern. And Northwestern got beat at home by Duke, right? So
Northwestern's not looking very good at all either. They barely beat Miami of Ohio 13-6 in week one.
That's going to be a weird game too, where you're playing in. It looks almost like a soccer stadium.
It is a soccer field.
Yeah.
12,000 seat soccer field, but
12,000. How many tickets will Indiana get for that game? A couple hundred?
Man, I don't know that Northwestern could fill it. Like when you go to the basketball game at the Welsh Ryan Arena, Indiana manages to get their hands on quite a few tickets in the basketball arena. So I would imagine, especially with that game being as close as it is in Evanston, Illinois, that Indiana will do the same.
If they keep losing, there'll be plenty of tickets there. I don't know. I have to look and see who Northwestern plays between then and now. They got Eastern Illinois this weekend. They'll win at Washington. They're not
winning that game.
Yeah, so they'll be 2-2.
Yeah, I'm telling you, this is just going to be a fun season. The entire Big Ten is going to be a fun season. I've mentioned earlier that I've been working on my Big Ten Power Index, and other than the top two teams, Ohio State and USC for me, then there's a bottom two, which is Northwestern and UCLA. You got this group of teams in the middle that are all, you could throw a rope around them. Now, the top in the middle is probably better than the bottom of the middle, which Maryland would be on the bottom of the middle right now. Anybody that's lost a game to me is in the mid to bottom of the middle. That includes Iowa, who loses at home to Iowa State. They could not put up the offense that we thought that they would, but plenty of other teams. And we'll talk about those on the backside of this break. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company. Rick Bozich is with us. We're back to the Hard Truth Studios right after this.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg.
In the market for a new or used vehicle? Well, nobody beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door. If you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from RE/MAX Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com.
Looking for someone to cater your next corporate event, family reunion, or tailgate? To some, a garnish may be nothing more than just a decoration put last on a plate. But in Bloomington, catering starts with Garnish Catering. Serving all of Bloomington and surrounding areas, Garnish Catering is waiting to help make your next event one to remember. Planning a great event shouldn't have to be stressful. Whether we quote you just for catering or a total event package, you can trust that you're making the right choice with Garnish Catering. Visit garnishcatering.com. That's garnishcatering.com. Garnish Catering is a proud partner of WOW Food Group.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer.
Country living is just a swing away. It can be hard to find the exact home that fits your family's needs, so there couldn't be a better time to build a new home with Property Shore Construction. Now building exclusively south of Bloomington within the Stonecrest Golf Community. Choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Revesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details.
Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle with the Fresh Fork. Chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep. Proudly fueling IU athletes and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. The Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use promo code RADIO20 and get $20 off your first order.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg.
Let's just say one week. It's really good. Just excited to get more intel on somebody that's good. So just being able to watch them play another football game was good for us. What else have you seen from that second week? It's just an explosive team. They play hard. That's their thing. Tough guys. They're going to play hard, and not a team that's really going to beat themselves. It seems like they have a lot of continuity too, because they had a lot of transfers come with them. So it seems like they all kind of know what they're doing. Can you sense that watching? I would sense that, yeah. Just experienced guys. Guys that are coming out there and kind of know their role and play to that. Not trying to get out of just mostly just playing their role. And they do that at a high level. They scored 77. What's the strength of their offense? I'd say the quarterback.
What did last?
Deshaun Foster, UCLA's head coach, with very in-depth answers there on those questions. But I don't know what else I would expect him to say, but wasn't a lot as he prepares to face Indiana and talking about what he saw from last week. But the strength of the offense he puts at the base of the quarterback, which it pretty much has to be true. I mean, that should be the strength of your offense. He's your center point, but fortunately, Indiana is surrounded by good talent in the running backs room. The wide receivers, you mentioned Omar Cooper, and I don't know if you heard when I was talking to Kyle Neddenriep, but Pro Football Focus gave Omar Cooper the highest grade as a wide receiver in Division I football last week, and Elijah Surratt, number 3. So Indiana had 2 out of the top 3 graded wide receivers in the country last week in that blowout game over Western Illinois. But that's something we've seen a lot of with Pro Football Focus, having Indiana had 3 of the top 10 defensive transfers. There is just a lot of talent that this team has, and it's not played. These guys can play, and I know a lot of people question the guys that came over from whether it was JMU or wherever because they were quote unquote mid-major guys. Man, I would think that by now people would realize there are players everywhere, number one. But number two, JMU was a pretty damn good program. They were ranked in the top 25. And there's a reason for that. These guys look at Indiana's linebacker. Daggone it, I'm losing his name. Yes. What a great job he's doing. He was a JMU guy. It's working out pretty well so far. So I'm not concerned with that. But Indiana is a team. They're not making mistakes. And that is something that Curt Cignetti has preached to us about. His JMU team was the least penalized team in the conference, and coming out and getting all those penalties in that first game, 9 total penalties, and then to go down to 2, one of which was kicking the ball out of bounds, of all things. So that's a great, that's the differences of moving between games 1 and games 2. UCLA hasn't had a game 2 yet. And I think that definitely is going to hurt them, especially after what we saw against Hawaii.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, the early returns are promising. We'll see how it holds up on the road. And we'll see how it holds up once they get into Big Ten play. But it's obvious that Cignetti, as he approaches building his team so far, he's very comfortable with guys moving up from programs that aren't as don't have the resources, don't have the tradition, don't have the level of power football respect, and saying the top performers at that level could come in into IU and perform, whereas previously, like when you looked at who Allen got, he got a lot more guys who came from Power 5 programs who didn't play there and brought them to IU to see what they would do, whether it was, I can think of Miles Jackson or Burris, who's still on the team, or Bleedy, or there was a bunch of guys. Huh?
Jameer
Yeah,
Johnson on defense.
Yeah, there were a lot of guys who came in from Taven Jackson's another one. I mean, guys that were at programs like UCLA or Texas Tech or Texas A&M or Tennessee or wherever, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. Linnell Carr has worked out. He's still there. He came from West Virginia. So, but Signetti's fine taking the James Madison guys, or there's an Old Dominion guy, isn't there? And there's some guys that have moved up from other programs who, in some ways they still probably have a chip on their shoulder, because when they were recruits, the Power 5 schools didn't think they were either big enough or quick enough or tough enough or whatever to play at their school. So they proved themselves at that level, and now they want to move up and show they can play at the power level.
Absolutely, and looking forward to that. I was just wondering last week when I was watching that game, man, what would this have been like had Indiana not bought out of the Louisville game? While I agree with what they did, and I understand why, and it makes sense, and it still makes sense, I really got to wondering. I'm like, man, I think Indiana made enough progress between weeks 1 and 2 that would have been a good game, I think.
Well, it was a good game last year in the Hoosier Dome. I mean, they only lost by 7, remember?
Yeah, they shouldn't. That just drives me nuts, the play calling.
The Walt Bell special. But, they made the right call. They made the right decision. I think at the time when they got out of the series, I think the belief was that Tom Allen was still going to be the coach. So if he was going to be here this year, they wanted to put a guaranteed win on his resume to help prop him up and build fan interest. And then they decided, so they spent $1 million there, then they spent the other $15 million, and they did it right. They did the right thing. They moved on.
They could have given me 8, you 8, and we'd have both been much happier.
Yeah, I haven't been on the Penn State message boards this week to see, but I'm sure the reaction wasn't very good when they gave up 27 points or whatever it was to Bowling Green. So
trailing at the half, 300-yard first half yard to Connor Bazelak, the former Indiana quarterback.
I know. I'm sure it was not good. And that was after the week before people had Penn State in the playoff after the way they beat West Virginia on the road. So, Indiana made the right move. They got a good coach. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And
absolutely not. And football, like I said, is Purdue. They look good. It was Indiana State, but they look good. They played clean. That's going to be a game that I did not expect it to be this week now, as Purdue hosts Notre Dame. Notre Dame, losing at home to Northern Illinois. They've had some real clunkers at home in the last couple of years, which has been shocking. But if Purdue can pull out a win there, you want to talk about 3 or 4 feathers that Ryan Walters can put in his hat at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of pressure on Notre Dame in this game. I mean, as you mentioned, they lost 2 years ago to Marshall and Stanford at home, which are inexplicable. Last year they had a better year. This year they go on the road and beat Texas A&M, and people think, they were in all the early college football playoff predictions. Now, not so sure. They can't afford. If they lose to Purdue, it's done. They're not going to get in the playoff. There's no way they can. They don't have enough quality wins ahead in their schedule, and they're not going to fire Marcus Freeman because he's only in year 3, but there's going to be a certain percentage of the fan base that's going to say he's not the guy. We don't like this. We need a different coach. And that's what he's going to be dealing with for the rest of the year. So there's a ton of pressure on Purdue, on Notre Dame to win that game. And it's in West Lafayette. And I think they're favored by 10. I think it is.
A little surprising. I think that's going to be a tougher game than the odds makers think. And so
I'm not a believer. They brought in, this is the second year in a row they brought, like everybody does, they brought a quarterback in out of the transfer portal. Last year it was Sam Hartman of Wake Forest, and he had a good year, not a great year. And this year it's Riley Leonard from Duke. I saw him play last year against Louisville here. I wasn't a fan. And that's just a weird thing. Notre Dame used to get the cream of the crop in recruiting in quarterbacks, and they've got a 5-star on the bench, Lloyd Carr's grandson, the former Michigan coach. And I've seen some speculation that he might get a chance to play this week, but I guarantee if Riley Leonard doesn't do well, he will get in the game. And that's, you don't ever want to be a team the third game of the year and people are already clamoring for a freshman quarterback to come in and save you.
Former Purdue coach Jeff Brom down at Louisville now. What's on Louisville's agenda this weekend? What are the expectations?
Well, they've won 2 games easily. They beat Austin Peay the first week, and then last week they played Jacksonville State, which is the team they recruited to fill the gap left when Louisville bought out of the contract. Indiana bought out of the contract. Louisville's actually off this week, so that they're not playing. Then they come back next week and play Georgia Tech, which after winning its first 2 games of the year, went on the road to Syracuse and got beat. So that game's lost a little bit of its luster. And then 2 weeks from Saturday, Louisville actually travels to Notre Dame. So, Louisville's played a little bit tougher competition than Indiana's played. But, they haven't really played the kind of teams they're going to have to play to prove how good they are. But they're 19th in the AP poll, so they've already gotten some respect.
And Kentucky, I don't want to. They're looking, I don't know, middling. What do you think? Shaky?
No, they're shaky. I was there last Saturday. They blew out Southern Miss in their first game, but they got hammered at home last week by South Carolina. They completed 6 passes the entire game. They benched a quarterback in the fourth quarter, and they play number 1 Georgia this week in Lexington. So the sky is starting to fall there. And you look ahead at their schedule, they got Georgia, all right? They got to go to Ole Miss, which is a top 10 team. They got to go to Tennessee, which is a top 10 team. They got to go to Texas, which is number 2 in the country. And they still got to play Louisville. And there's one other team that they play is pretty good. They got, the SEC schedule. So they're looking at maybe 6 or 7 wins. And there was the stadium started to empty last week in the third quarter. The starting quarterback, Brock Vandegrift, threw a pick 6 late in the third quarter, and the fans had seen enough and headed for the exits.
Yeah, some fun games to watch in the Big Ten this week. The biggest one, I guess, is Alabama. Kalen DeBoer traveling up to Madison to take on Wisconsin, which Wisconsin has not looked overwhelming yet, but neither has Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama kind of struggled to put South Florida away last weekend. Wisconsin has the same issue it had last year, doesn't really have a quarterback. But the game's in Camp Randall. I doubt if Alabama's ever been there before. It'll be a happening. And I don't know. I think Alabama's favored by 15.5 or 16. It's kind of a show me game for both teams. And, you mentioned, other games in the Big Ten. Notre Dame, Purdue's a big game. Oregon State's a big game.
That's a big game for 2 reasons. First, Oregon has looked shaky at best. They've gone from being the number 2 team for me in the Big Ten down to they're in that middle group now. They've won 2 games, but they have not dominated anyone. And Oregon State, if they could knock them off, that would, for me, be the end for Oregon. But also, Oregon State hosts Purdue next week.
Oh, wow. And the game's at Oregon State. And Oregon State, I'm sure, has a big chip on its shoulder because they got left behind in the conference realignment. They sit alone with Washington State. So it's a big game for Washington State. And the other game that's interesting, I think, for IU fans to watch will be Maryland, Virginia. Virginia is a surprising 2-0 team, which won at Wake Forest last week. And Maryland's coming off a loss. They're former ACC rivals. The game's in Charlottesville, so we'll find out a lot more about the Terps in that game.
Absolutely. And how surprised? Well, I guess it's not surprising, but Nebraska looked good in their win over Colorado. Their true freshman quarterback did not look like a true freshman.
Yeah, he's a 5-star recruit who I think initially was committed to Georgia, right? And then he ends up at Nebraska because I'm pretty sure Matt Rule has his uncle on the coaching staff, in addition to whatever NIL opportunities.
Whatever it takes, baby.
Yeah, and he looks like a 5-star. He played like a 5-star. And Nebraska has not been Nebraska for a number of years, and we've heard the Nebraska's back thing a number of years, and we'll see if they actually are. I think they have a winnable game this week, but I'm pretty sure Nebraska plays – you need to play Ohio State right after they play IU or right before they play IU, and Nebraska has king-size goals for this season.
Absolutely. Rick Bozich, WDRB.com. Appreciate you, brother. Look forward to talking about it next week.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Have a great weekend. Rick
All right,
Bozich joining us here. Big thanks to Rick, along with Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star. Most importantly, to each and every one of you for joining us. We're back to do it again. I'll be traveling tomorrow, so we're still working out what we're going to do with that. We'll keep you abreast. But we'll be coming to you from Pasadena on Friday for certain. Until the next time I see you, from the Hard Truth Studios, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.